Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Patrice, and in this video we will be discussing things I've read. And now let's get started. In this video I'm going to talk about 2 historical fictions and 3 cozy mysteries. The first book I'm going to start with is How to Seal Your Own Fate by Kristen Perrin, and this is a cozy mystery. This is the second book in this new series, and the first book was titled How to Solve Your Own Murder. And the summary says Annie Adams is settling into life in Castle Knoll when local fortune teller Penny Lane shares a cryptic message only hours before being found dead inside the locked Gravestown estate. Annie has no choice but to delve into the dark secrets of her new countryside home in order to find out just what Penny Lane was trying to warn her about before her brand new life comes crashing down around her. So the things that I liked. So the main character in this series is okay, and the supporting characters are kind of blah, but they are growing on me. Like, I'm not sure how I feel about this series yet. Like, we haven't really gotten to meet like many of the locals. Like, we haven't gotten to see how Annie is I guess integrating into her new home. She's living in her aunt's mansion. In the previous book, her aunt died, and Annie solved the mystery of how her aunt was murdered. And one of the things that I did not care for in this book was it was kind of a repeat of what happened in the first book. So in the first book, like I said, Annie's aunt is murdered and she solves the murder mystery, but it hinges on a crime that occurred when Annie's aunt was younger. So it really dealt with Annie's aunt and her group of friends. So in this second book here, again, we have Annie trying to solve a crime that occurred when her aunt and her aunt's friends were younger. So Penny Lane is one of her aunt's friends that she grew up with, and now she's dead and Annie has to solve this mystery. So it kind of seems like it's a repeat of the first book, and yeah, I wasn't really enthused about that because I don't know how long the author could keep like solving mysteries like this, like with Annie's aunt and some crime from the past. Like, I think she's going to have to move on to like Annie and having Annie integrate into like the local life of this new town that she's moved into, and we're going to have to actually get to know like the local people without Annie's aunt coloring like everything. Let's see. In this book here, I wasn't really crazy about the murderers' like motivations, like why they killed Penny, and then like the whole resolution and the conflict. Like, that was interesting, like how we got to the murder, and I guess like the events surrounding it, like from the past, but not in the present day part. Like, it just didn't make any sense, like why the murderer would kill Penny now. So again, like I said, I'm not sure how I feel about this series yet. They are well written books, and I don't know, I might continue if there's another one. We'll have to see. But overall, I gave this a 3 out of 5 stars. The next book I'm going to talk about is The Murder of Roger Ackroyd, and this is by Agatha Christie. Now, for those of you who don't know, Agatha Christie is like a really like famous cozy mystery writer. So this would be considered a classic, this book here. The summary says, a widow's suicide has stirred up dreadful rumors of blackmail and deception. Most shocking of all is the murder of her lover, Roger Ackroyd, stabbed to death in his own study. There are suspects and motives galore, and rumors that his neighbor, the recently retired detective Hercule Poirot, doesn't have a clue who did the dastardly deed. So, the things that I like, I really enjoyed this because this is a great example. Like Agatha Christie books are great examples of good, cozy mysteries. There were a lot of clues, a lot of red herrings, so everybody's got a secret. Anybody could have done it. Now, the things that I did not enjoy. So this book here is billed as like, if you're going to read one Agatha Christie book, this should be the one. And they say this is her most famously shocking detective novel. And to me, it was not. It wasn't shocking. The twist at the end wasn't very shocking. And I think that's just because, like, back in her day, it probably would have been shocking just because the twist that she included was not done in her time, like the time that she wrote this book. So there's a thing in cozy mysteries, it's called the 10 Commandments of Detective Fiction. And these were created by a mystery writer called Ronald Knox. And he was part of the Detection Club. And that is a group of writers who included Agatha Christie and like Dorothy Sayers. She's another like famous cozy mystery writers. So they made up like these commandments and like these little rules that you should follow to make like a good cozy mystery. And in this book, Agatha Christie just like totally goes against the rules. But since I'm reading this book like in this present day, it wasn't shocking to me because I've read mysteries like this all the time. Like you can pretty much guess like what was going to happen, so the ending wasn't as shocking. Now, to me, this is my third Agatha Christie book. So I read Murder on the Nile, I've read Murder on the Orient Express, and now I have read this one, the Murder of Roger Ackroyd. And to me, I think Murder on the Orient Express is a more shocking novel to me. Like the ending and the twist that's in that just like blew me away. I was like, what? So to me, I would recommend, if you're going to read a Christie, to read Murder on the Orient Express. So overall, I gave this book a 3.5 out of 5 stars. The next book I'm going to talk about is The Windsor Knot, and this is by S.J. Bennett, and this is a cozy mystery. And this is the first book in the series, so that means this is a new series for me. So I picked this up just because I was interested. So the premise was very interesting. It's about Queen Elizabeth, and she is solving murder mysteries. So let me read you the summary first. It's the early spring of 2016, and Queen Elizabeth is at Windsor Castle in preparation for her 90th birthday. Things are interrupted by the death of a guest in one of the castle bedrooms. MI5 suspects foul play and begins questioning the servants. but the queen knows they're looking in the wrong place. The queen has the skill for solving crimes, and with help from her assistant private secretary, Rosie O'Shoddy, the queen begins to investigate. So, like I said, I picked this up because I thought this idea of the queen solving crimes, like I just knew this was going to be good. And I absolutely love Rosie O'Shoddy, like the queen's assistant private secretary. Really good character. First of all, she is like a Nigerian British citizen, and she was like in the army, and like she's like totally like just such a good character. Like she shows up in like high heels, and she's like a fashionista, and it's just like amazing to see like this character play like such a important role in the story. Now, other than that, there was not too much else that I liked about this. Like, I was really excited to read this because I thought it was going to be like a cute cozy and like full of humor, and it was not. It was very serious, blah, and sometimes boring. A lot of time is taken up describing the queen's duties and like the events that she's going to, and it's like slowing down the action. Like, this is not action packed at all. It's very slow. Like I mentioned, a lot of time talking about Philip and the queen and what she's eating, how they're planning her birthday, and she's getting dressed, and she's going here, and she's taking her dogs out, and it's like, hello, can we get back to this murder mystery? I want murder. I want the murder. Let's see. I wanted to see Rosie like kicking more butt and more involved in the story. Like, she did a few tasks for the queen, so like the queen could not like just stop her day and go and solve this mystery. So instead of her going, she would send Rosie to do these tasks, like to interview people and to check up on clues and stuff that they figured out. But Rosie still did not have like a big part. Like, I would like to see a spin-off of just Rosie like solving crimes. Now that would be a better story to me. Let's see. So the suspects in the story, there was not like a lot of character development. Like, we have no idea like why they did the things that they did. Yeah, like we got minimal background on these people. Most of them, like, we didn't get to hear them talk. They didn't interact with each other, so you just did not get to see how everything was connected. And the biggest drawback for me, the biggest thing I didn't like was that the reader could not participate in solving this crime. So the whole thing with cozy mysteries is that you, as the reader, you feel like you're getting these clues and you're putting the pieces together, and by the time you get to the end, you feel like you should know who did it, and you know, like, you should have enough information to come up with a good guess of who the culprit is. And a lot of this mystery, like, things were solved off the page. Like, a lot of things the queen is like, oh, this is how this makes sense, but she didn't tell us like what she was thinking, or you know, like what she figured out. So it's like you're in the dark until the end of the book, and we get to the end and the resolution is like so anticlimactic. Like, the way everything is laid out, like when you get to the reasoning of why the crime happened and who the murderer was and why they did it, like, everything is explain, but you did not get to help solve this mystery. Like, you didn't get to see like how these clues came together. It's just like at the end someone is giving the queen a report on what happened, and the queen kind of like manipulated or guided them to this resolution, but it was just totally like non-satisfying. So I ended up giving this book a 3.5 out of 5 stars. And that's just because the idea was original and I enjoyed Rosie so much. And it was a good mystery, but I just didn't like how the reader could not participate. So maybe I will not even give it a 3.5. I think for that part, because that's the whole point of a cozy. So I'm going to drop this down to a 3 out of 5 stars. The next book I'm going to talk about is The Great Mrs. Elias, and this is by Barbara Chase-Riboud, and this is a historical fiction. And the summary says, a murder in case of mistaken identity brings the police to Hannah Elias's glitzy 5-story mansion on Central Park West. Hannah has done things she's not proud of to survive. Shedding her past, Hannah slips on a new identity before relocating to New York City. She quietly invests in the stock market, growing her fortune with the help of businessmen. The unsolved murder turns Hannah's world upside down and threatens to destroy everything she's built. Now, the things that I liked, I really enjoyed this story. One of the main reasons is that this is about a real life person and events. And if you know me, you know I like going down these rabbit holes and reading like the real life newspaper stories and seeing like the pictures of these people and everything. So I really like that part. This book is the story is full of drama. There's a lot of stuff going on. This author, she used the historical figures that she mentions in the book. Like, one of them is J.P. Morgan, and I just like how she actually used like real life characters in the story. They actually had a role in the story, and she just wasn't mentioning them to throw them, like in the story. They actually played a part, an integral part of the story. So I liked how the historical figures were used in this story. And I like that this book, it just makes you think about like, what would you do to survive? Like, and then like how you have to think about the moral and ethical consequences of your decisions. So I like that part. The things that I didn't care for, so there are a lot of characters to keep track of in this story, so sometimes that can be confusing, especially because some of the characters, they look alike, and then they change their names, and then we're switching timelines. We go from the past to the present, so it can be a lot to keep track of. And sometimes there were some moments, because of all the switching and name changes and stuff like that, I didn't really understand what the author was trying to say, like some of the questions. But as I'm thinking about it, most of the questions I had were resolved by the end of the story. One thing I felt, the story did not need to be as long as it was. Like, it was repetitive at times, so she could have, like, it just talked about over and over like Bessie's love for Egyptian history and how she likes to, have the finest things in life, and then she goes back over like her childhood a lot. So it was a little bit repetitive, and that could have cut down on some of the pages. This book is almost 400 pages long, and yeah, we definitely could have edited out some of the repetitive parts. But one thing I wish that we would have found out, like, after the whole trial is over. So Hannah, they're trying to arrest her because they think she is running like a con artist racket, and it's like a whole lot of drama that leads up to this. So she goes on trial, and I just wanted to know, like, what happened to her after the whole trial and everything is over. Like, what did she do later on in her life after, like, this whole media frenzy and everything surrounding her died down. But all in all, this was a great story. I'm glad I actually got to it, because at one point I wasn't able to finish this book, so I did check it out again, and I'm glad that I did get to this. And overall, I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. The last book I'm going to talk about is The Filling Station by Vanessa Miller, and this is another historical fiction. And the summary says, sisters Margaret and Evelyn Justice have grown up in the prosperous Greenwood district of Tulsa, Oklahoma. The 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre upends everything they know and brings them unspeakable loss. The sisters flee along the iconic Route 66 and stumble upon the Threat Filling Station. There, they are able to process their pain, fill up their souls, and find strength as they wrestle with the faith in God that's left them feeling abandoned. So I really enjoyed this story. So this is the first book that I read by Vanessa Miller. I believe she also has a book about the Happy Land. So I think I will have to pick that up, because I really did like her writing. Like, it was a easy read, like you could get through it pretty quickly. This book for me was a tear jerker, just because of the subject matter, like talking about the race massacre at Tulsa. It just made me like sad and angry all at the same time. Some of the things I really liked about the story is that the author uses firsthand accounts of survivors to build her story. She has some quotes from like the Red Cross. They did a report on the massacre. Like I said, there are some firsthand accounts and quotes from people who survived that she added in. I like that. I love how this story shows the resilience of the Black people that lived in the Greenwood district, how they wanted to come back and rebuild, especially after all the terror that they faced. It just showed how resilient they were. One other thing I really enjoyed is how the author weaves in like faith in God and like the story with Margaret, and where she struggles with her faith, like after the two sisters had to leave their home and everything that they knew behind. And it just, you know, like I think like a lot of people could relate to that. Like you have something very traumatic or very like a big disappointment or something earth-shattering that happens to you, and how you can really struggle with your faith. So that was nice to see, like how Margaret was able to resolve that, and just her story in general, like getting over the trauma of what happened. I also enjoy learning the history about like the Threat filling station and Route 66. So the Threat filling station was a place where African American travelers, they could go to um, stop and get gas and have a bite to eat, and even like sleep there, just because it was dangerous. In some towns you had sundown towns, which means if you were African American and you were caught there after the sun goes down, they could lynch you or beat you up or just do anything to you. So you had to know like where it was safe for you to stay while you were traveling, and the Threat filling station was one of those places. So it was nice to learn, about that history, and just to see how that was I guess like a way station to like pass along news and information as well. So some of the things I did not particularly like, or like I said, this was a heartbreaking tale. Just the injustice that the people of Greenwood had to deal with, especially like after the race massacre happened and they went back to rebuild their homes and businesses and things. It was just one indignity after another. It really made me angry. Like I said, tears were flowing. Yeah. So this book does contain discussion questions, but to me, the questions were not really that deep. They didn't really dig into the story or really make you think. They were kind of like surface level questions. So if you are going to use this book for like a book club, you may want to like try to search for some other discussion questions or come up with some other ones of your own. And I really wish that we would have gotten to see the point of view of some of the other characters. So Margaret meets a nice man named Elijah, and he was integral in restoring her faith, but I would have liked to have gotten more from his point of view, and maybe some of their neighbors and things like that. Like, we really just got the story from Margaret and Evelyn's side. So yeah, I would have liked to have seen some of the other characters, like what they thought about things or their opinions or how they saw what was happening to Margaret and Evelyn. But overall, like I said, I really enjoyed this story. I would recommend that you pick it up, and I gave this a 4.5 out of 5 stars. So those are all of the books for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know if you've read any of these books or if any of these sounded interesting to you. And I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.